chat with you, dude, is a legitimate pleasure.
Yeah, man.
And it's
Same
been
here. Same
way
here.
too long. The
I
last
know.
time
I
we
know.
talked, we were predicting this moment in time, like prior to the election.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we'll get into it, but I think upon reflection, I would surprise you on how I feel about this. I'm not as excited as I think you may think I may.
Okay.
But I still think it's better than what it could have been. Anyway, that's a conversation for a different day. But I'm just saying, dude, so much has changed since I last talked to you. So I'm so excited.
Same here, man. Same here.
So I got to ask before we get started here.
Yeah.
I saw that your show is kicking up again. Are you doing a solo show? Like, where can people expect to find you? What's coming up on the docket here with you?
What's coming up with me is I'm dipping my toe into the live streaming thing, right? Dipping my toe into it. Just because I feel like it's a much simpler way for me to do my content because I get to do the stream, and then once I finish the stream, I just kind of take the clips from the stream and make them into videos. And I'm like, how come I never thought about that before? Like, this
I
is
gotta
way
tell
simpler.
you, dude, why we do the live show.
Yeah.
I have too much of a artistic love for the editing of the podcast, and that's a 2.5, 3 hour show sometimes. So when you're like, I don't know if this is the difference between Joe Rogan's show and this comedian Rick Glassman. Like, if you watch Rick Glassman's show, there is 2,000% time more spent in editing. And he's got like animations, cartoons that come on the screen. Joe Rogan is just talking. And so the live show has been the beauty of, I get to do something every week. It's as dense and topical as I'd want my podcast to be, but I don't edit. I don't need to edit. We did it. It's up. I just rip the audio. Now I put that on like an RTMP feed and send that as a podcast. And this I get to do now in like chapters. Like today's episode, I got to acknowledge that we're June 16th.
That's right.
And the folks are going to finally hear this July 8th, right?
Nice.
You're, a little less than a month, but we're building a dense season. I get to put my heart into having the fun of editing it all. And every week now you can have an episode for a 2-month stretch because, dude, it was so much. It was totally, trying to keep up in a week window. I don't know how South Park does it. You want to know how they do it? They also don't have an 8-hour job, 40-hour week job that they're going to. Makes it a lot easier to give it the time this thing requires.
It is much harder to do this when you have things going on during like the rest of the day because you can't really like if this was just your job, like if you made enough money from this, then you have literally like 24 hours to divide, how you want to do things. But you always have to give 8 to a job, right? Then after that, you have to get to sleep to go to work. So you got that chunk of time. And so it only leaves you like maybe like 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours during like a weekday to dedicate to this. I get it. I get it.
So let me ask you. All right, you're getting into streaming. You're still doing content on top of that. What else do you have on your plate currently? Before I know you were getting into, there was like, weren't you in choirs and there were other things?
I was.
So basically, what do you got going on? Dude, there's been a long evolution. You and I have lived a pandemic.
So basically, I've stepped away from all of that stuff, from the choir, the church stuff, to focus on my physical and mental health, which was taking a toll. It kind of put me on my ass, to be honest with you. And I haven't been at my job for like a month. So I'm supposed to be going back this week. So again, I'm trying to because I was juggling. I had the full-time job, like you. I was doing like this stuff. Then I had the church stuff, which became like a lot more work than like people think. It's like I was in charge of learning the music for Sundays, but also running the rehearsals and learning the parts for the different parts of the choir. And so it was like, so much stuff happened. And I had like no free time really. I had one free Saturday in a month.
That makes it so tough.
Yeah.
And again, it takes such a toll on you. Like you were saying, you do, it's refreshing with the modernization of the workforce that like a mental health day is a sick day. Like I'm taking a sick day. It's a mental health day. Like my medication is the golf course. Sue me.
I hear that. I hear that, brother. I hear that.
So, you know what? Without further ado, we got to kick off this episode because the first thing I want to ask you about is this kind of eye-opening experience you've had with reading the Bible, which, brought upon a reaction most people wouldn't expect. So let's kick off the episode.
Yes, sir.
So I love that term, think tank. Think tank. You know what a think tank is? Like, how's a think tank go, Jim?
Yeah, they got cancel culture nowadays. You gotta watch what you say. It's getting real scary out here.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know if I can take the conversation here, but we might as well. It's the Rethink Tank. Looks like you had a little bit too much to think here in the Rethink Tank.
All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining us again. I appreciate today's episode. Like I said, we're kicking off a strong season coming in the next couple months here, and there's no better guest to start off this series. Somebody that really adds a perspective while also I can find a common ground and proves that most of us that come from all these different corners can pretty much agree on everything. It's the nuance where the real fruits are. And that's why I love these conversations so much. So without further ado, let me bring in my guest for today, the Cruel Philosophr. Cruel Philosophr, I appreciate you joining me. My first question for you, as you were suggesting, you're getting into streaming, you're developing kind of a more online presence in a new realm. And one of the pieces that I saw you posted recently was how you actually read the Bible, which is so funny you say that because people talk about the Bible, people live the Bible, and yet barely any of them have actually read the Bible. And almost none of them have actually read it in its entirety. So to take on a mission where, can we agree if this was like comic book style or even like fourth grade reading level, more people probably would indulge, but it is almost, it's especially how language has evolved so far. Mm-hmm. It is practically a foreign language. You're forced to dissect this in such a deep way that it's not just an easy read, but it's also very time consuming and people get impatient with it. So I want to learn a little bit about how that experience was for you, because even for people that aren't religious, it's like, all right, well, I just want to get a perspective of why people view a certain way, or how powerful is this text? Mm-hmm. And as somebody that came in, like as you had indicated, maybe with a little bit more of a church background, it did present a more surprising devaluation where it's like, maybe it's provoking more questions than answers. Yep. So what was that like for you?
Well, first and foremost, before I get into that, I want to thank you again, brother, for having me on. I always love these conversations. I think it's my third time on here.
I'm going to go with fourth, at least. Dude, we had two back-to-back because we got canceled on an episode, and then you indulged me with coming back on to complain that we were just too truthful and honest for the folks.
Yeah. So, like, I always love, it's always an honor when you have me on, so I want to thank you first and foremost. Please. As far as your question, so, yeah. Now, this is actually shocking, or maybe not shocking, depending on how you look at it. I was researching this, and I think somewhere like 1 in 5 people that are Christian in America have like read the Bible, and this is not even including like the whole Bible, just like the Bible, So, a couple of years ago, I've been trying to say, you know what, I'm a Christian, I gotta read the Bible. Like, how am I call myself a Christian and I don't read the Bible? Now, unbeknownst to me, this was like a common thing. So, I would always start it, and I would always get up to like Leviticus, and then I just like fall off because Leviticus, to me, was just such a boring book. I mean, just boring. I'm like snooze job. I fall off, right? The beginning of this year, I think towards the end of last year, I was like, you know what? This year, I'm going to do it. I'm going to force myself to do it. And I made it past Leviticus. I got all the way to, I think, the book of Isaiah. And then, I'm not going to lie to you, I started getting confused. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. That's like the prophet books. So it's like a lot of, metaphors, and I'm like, I'm confused. And I was also enrolled in this course, this online Bible course, and they were discussing the New Testament. So I was like, you know what? I want to kind of, follow along with the New Testament. So let me skip to the New Testament, read that. I'll come back to this and finish it out. So finish the New Testament as well. And this is like where we get into what led to my deconversion, because a lot of the stuff that I was reading, I wasn't prepared for, even though I had nuggets of that information throughout my life. Like you go to church, you hear the preacher say certain things. When you read it like back to back to back, and ain't no organ playing or ain't no preacher, throwing some sauce on the message. Some of that stuff is dark, man.
Ooh, you said it. Seriously.
Like some of that stuff is dark. I remember the first time I got to Exodus, right? Reading Exodus. And I had read Exodus before, but again, we always, and I said this in my in my live stream, where when you're a Christian and you read the Bible, you always put yourself in the position of the Israelites, right? Like, because it's about them. It's like them against these other tribes and, all that stuff. So, story of Moses and everything, right? And so, God, one of the plagues, God sends the angel of death and he takes the life of the firstborn child if you don't have lamb's blood over your doorpost. And of course, the Egyptians weren't God's chosen people, so they didn't have no lamb's blood over their posts. And so all of their firstborn sons died. I'm reading this like, and again, I've heard the story before, but I would always put myself in a position of the Israelites. So now that I'm like, look at more objective, I'm like, this is kind of messed up.
Especially if you're one of these Egyptians.
Yeah,
Things are cool, man.
Like, this is a little bit dark, right? And so it starts there, and then you get to like other parts in the Bible where it goes into like Israel going to the Promised Land, and of course the Promised Land had people there already. Like it wasn't an empty land. There were other tribes that were there, other people, right? And so the Israelites had to do battle to gain access to the land. And you kind of, read certain things where, God instructs them to leave like nothing alive, right? Animals, women. It says explicitly like kill the men, kill the women, kill the children. Like, sometimes in some translations it says like infants, like. So it's not like, oh, kill everyone, but God don't really mean women. No, it's like it's laid out in the text. No, women, children, infants, sometimes animals, right? Kill the animals as well. The part about slavery. It gets dark, man. It gets dark. And so as I was reading that, it was hard for me to rationalize, okay, God, the benevolent God, the all-powerful, this good God, sanctioning all of these actions, and like my mind couldn't, contain these two things, and so the only conclusion that I was able to kind of come up with was what was written down. These are the words of men, and maybe they truly believed it was from God, but this is not like divinely inspired, because it's hard for me to rationalize a good God, sanctioning things that by our standards today, we would classify as genocide, as like, if a country did the things that, according to the Bible, God instructed the Israelites to do, we would have them up on like war crime charges.
Well, and I'm going to draw a parallel from another religion that isn't too far away from this, like Mormonism, right? So people like South Park can make a whole play mimicking the Book of Mormon, because it, to the outsider looking in, it's such an absurdity to make this claim that some guy was able to go into a room and like speak to God and reinterpret the Bible and give like the pure message of like the God's voice. Okay. That's never been the case. All right. So let's just say in a world, could have been this world, Cruel Philosophr, could have been. It also could not have been. But maybe in this world, some guy had 2 stones chiseled with 10 rules on them. It was like, these are the commandments of God. Maybe that happened. You know what the problem is with like knowledge with a capital K? Capital K. There's knowledge, there's operable knowledge that I have to have available to me that allows me to operate within my realm. I mean, I really don't understand, cellular micro science, but I rely upon it every day.
Yep.
That, I don't fall through this seat. So while there's operable science and knowledge, then there's capital K knowledge. No, I pretty much know we're on a planet, but I don't capital K knowledge no unless I have like this monkey's perspective. Unless I'm looking at the ball, I really don't know. I just have enough information to say I know enough. This is one of those instances where unless I'm seeing the guy who's holding the rocks with God's chiseled words, or really, I got to be the guy with the stones. I mean, I got to be the one that watched God chisel them in, and then I know. Other than that, I'm operating on other people's like faith. Oh wow, what a tricky word, and it comes into play every step along this dialogue. But I'm going to share my screen here real quick because there's a podcaster, Sean Ryan, that I've been seeing a lot in TikToks because he's been promoting this. Okay, so this is him, right? You've probably seen him before, but he's been promoting. Oh no, I shared the wrong page. One sec. He's been promoting this new version of the Bible. While you were talking about it, it made me think about how there's this action Bible, and it's like so cheesy. It's like this is what it needs to be for it to be understandable. But at the same time, like you said, I don't want to also have to dissect and do a puzzle game for every sentence, especially when the stories are so dark and gloom to begin with. So like there's no real middle ground. It's either we dumb it down to a comic book, or we try to force you into the lens of the old world, which what was the old world other than kings and other lords' interpretation? We know that book's been hacked up left and right to add stories, remove stories. Who knows what the original looked like? And so you said you took a Bible class.
Yep.
As somebody, I would do this dialogue a disservice if I didn't concede outright. I haven't read the Bible. I took First Communion. I went to Bible study as a kid. I've read verses. I've been involved with the Bible. I understand it enough, but I've never read the Bible like in all of these different Genesis and blah blah. I don't even know them. Like you're talking about Exodus. I'm like, I don't even know where that falls in the timeline of things. You're leading the way.
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm one last piece, and then I'm flipping it to you, is do you think maybe the value of the Bible, because again, once you start going, dude, pro-slaves, it's like, well, okay. And then what? I'm supposed to go, yeah, everything but that. And then we just like jump over something that's like, wait. You can't say rule 11, 12, skip 13, but we're doubling back down on 14. No, it doesn't work that way. So if we're doing this picking and choosing and like fruit ninja splicing of the Bible, could we maybe make the claim that the true value in it is just the dialogue when people sit down and try to make the message of the Bible? When you have that Bible study where like 6 people are sitting in a room dissecting verse 3, 14, 6. And then, we skipped over verse 5, but we're getting the true human value, moral compass, something that's operable in a society of 7.5 billion. Maybe the value in it isn't the word itself, but the shared word in a verbal dialogue sense.
So one thing to remember, right? You have to remember the Bible. So we speak about the Bible as if it's a book, but really the Bible is a collection of books, right? So different books. And of course, when I say books, I'm using like modern language books. These were like, what did they write on before? Like,
tablets and
whatever they exactly, right? Different periods of time by different authors, right? Who had different understandings of God, right? Quick example. If you, because you may not have read the Bible, but most of us know the story of Genesis, like the general story, right? In Genesis, if you ever get a chance to read Genesis, if you notice, God is described in almost very human-like terms, right? It says God was walking through the garden, right? It says, that God called out, for Adam and Eve, asking where they were, why did they hide themselves, right? Now, an omnipresent, all-knowing God wouldn't have to ask, where you are, why did you eat the fruit? Why hide yourself? Who told you was naked? He's asking questions, almost as if he doesn't know, right? And again, back to like him being described human-like, walking through the garden, walking with Adam, right? After he created everything on the seventh day, he rested, right? The reason he's described in these human terms is because the author or the scribe, whoever wrote Genesis at that time, or one of the authors of Genesis at that time, their perception of God was more human than how we perceive God today, as kind of like almost like a mystical force that has no body. It's hard for us to even conceptualize it, right? And I bring this up because when you ask what can we take from the Bible, I think after reading, most of the Bible, the stories within the stories are really like the
meat.
Exactly, right? Like you get the story of Samson, right? Samson and Delilah. The power is in his hair, and he's the strongest man alive. All right. And he's supposed to not tell anyone his secret because, of course, if they find your secret, that his power, his strength is from his hair, they can use it against him, right? He falls for this woman, Delilah. She, they cut his hair. He's weak, and he asks God, I know I shouldn't have told this woman my powers, and I wasn't living right. But if you give me strength one more time, I want to kill all of our enemies here. And God grants him the power, and he kills them all, right? David and Bathsheba. David, he's on top of his roof somewhere, and he sees Bathsheba bathing, right? He lusts after her. She was married to somebody else. He sleeps with her. She gets pregnant. So David got a problem now. Oh my God, I got this married woman pregnant. And so David tries to get her husband to come back. He calls her husband back, to the kingdom, and hoping that by calling him back, he will, sleep with Bathsheba. So the husband wouldn't know that David was the father of the child and not him. Again, super sleazy, sleazy. No, dude, I'm telling you, you don't have to believe the Bible. You got to read it, right? But here's the thing, it doesn't work though, bro. It don't work.
That's a bar right there, dude.
You don't have to believe it, but you got to read it. It doesn't work though, because the husband, he feels so bad at being away from his men. He's like, I don't deserve to be here with my wife while the rest of my men are out there fighting battles. So he never goes home. He stays at like a tavern or something, right? So David plan fails. So then here's what happens. David sends the husband back to the front line with instructions to give to like the general. The instructions say, have Bathsheba's husband fight in the area where he's most likely to die. So he gets killed on the battlefield, Bathsheba's husband, so that David can have Bathsheba all to himself. Again,
what?
Yes. Now, eventually, a prophet comes to David, and he has like a parable or like a metaphor where he tells David, "Hey, David, let me tell you a story. They're like two men." And one man, he had like sheep, he had like cat. And again, I'm not saying it verbatim because I don't remember the exact details, but the main part is he had all of these things, right? And this other man, he only had one sheep, right? The man that had everything came and took that one sheep for himself. What would you do to that man? And David said, "Oh, I'd kill him, right? Why is he taking this guy's one sheep and he already has everything?" And the prophet says, "David, that's you. You took this guy's wife." When you have you're king, you have all of these, the riches and everything. You could have any wife you want. And David already had a wife, by the way. David had like 4 wives, something like that, right? So again, you already had, but you wanted more, and you took this guy's wife and you killed them. And so in punishment, for punishment, God basically kills the son that Bathsheba was going to have. He kills the son, so they don't have a child. Now, eventually, she would give birth to another child, but their firstborn child gets killed. And so, the moral of the story: keep your lust in check. Don't lust after another woman. Keep your eyes, on God. Like the deep lessons in the Bible are fascinating. I'm telling you, you gotta read.
What's fascinating is what it took to get to the powerful message, right? Like the story that took us there was like, just keep your eye on God, don't be a hoe. But man, what a dialogue that got us there.
No. See, no, you know what's crazy? I'm not doing the story justice. When you read it, like the Bible is the most fascinating book you can read. I promise you. That sounds crazy, but when you read the Bible, especially because I used to like the New Testament more than the Old Testament because, Jesus and everything. But no, trust me. The Old Testament, that's where the lessons are at, brother. I'm telling you.
See, I'm going to have to dive into that.
Yeah,
and
man.
With this being, I loved the message you just glossed over earlier, where it's one thing to believe the Bible. It's a whole nother thing to just actually read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do think like the Holy Ghost, right? Like, what is the Holy Ghost? People ask. Like, the Bible has become that. It's this omniscient, almost like immaterial thing. You can't touch it. You can't. I'm talking socially. Like, there is a Bible, and you could go read it. And I'm trying to make the point that that's so different, a totally different animal than like what the Bible has, like in colloquial terms, like socially, what it's become. That being said, though, I am curious. I remember being in like English reading, when you're in like high school English and you're reading old literature, a lot of it is biblical. A lot of it references biblical concepts. And one of the things that themed true through like junior, senior year, I remember like doing a project on it, but like how the hand of God was so stern and sometimes cruel. Like you were saying, how there's a benevolent God, and that's what we've conceptually projected on a modern God today. And I think that's because the more modern our God becomes, the more it transcends religious lines and just becomes a omniscient spiritual figure. But that's its own kind of can of worms and dialogue. But keeping grounded to how the old concept of God was less benevolent and more
Yahweh.
Yeah, right.
That was his name.
Harshly
Yahweh, yeah.
true, cruel, honest to a fault, and ruled with an iron fist. It's funny, like the story you opened up with, how God, my punishment was giving away. I was great, given a God's gift, and my mistake was that I slipped up and told people, and it came back and bit me in the butt. They used it against me. I then go to God and go, God, please give me one more chance to be great again? What was my crime? Letting other people know how I'm great? Okay, that's its own thing. You said, looking at the stories from a different lens, taking a more macroscopic view, look at the Egyptians. I look at the story and I go, what about the other guys in the community that are like, Bob is a problem. He thinks he's like God. He's untouchable. He's the strongest dude in the tribe. He keeps stealing all our shit. He's running the roost. And I find out the way to keep Bob at bay is I could cut his hair. And I come in and now, guess who's just another regular plebe, Bob? And then Bob goes back to God and goes, God, I had control of those bitches, and it'd be really great if you could give me the upper hand again so I could go kill them all.
You know what's
My
so crazy?
question is, because I'm like the Bible, man, very convoluted long stories for a short message at the end. So my question for you is this. Do you like something that reigns true in, like, just look at the dreidel people. I'm not even going to say their name because I know better. They are God on this plane. they wholeheartedly believe, like you and I, we're just a couple of Gentiles. We're cockroaches. We could be squished. They are God's chosen people. Look at the Crusades. They believed they were doing it for God. Look at the Muslims. So this is more of a philosophical question to the cruel philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
Do we believe that God has chosen people? Guy with the pretty strong hair, he loses it. And then God gives it back to him to kill all those other people. Who are those other people? Are those the Gentiles? Are those the non-chosen people? Is God out here choosing people over others? Because like you said, a lot of the dark corners of these stories are someone else getting the upper hand of God's will over the rest. Why are they chosen? Is it because they have 8 candles and you put up the Christmas tree? Or is it morally grounded? You know, that's what we hope. We're like, man, if I just am a good person, it really doesn't matter what the God's name is. But man, it seems like God's gotten an opinion.
So before I answer that question, I wanted to let you know, I laughed inside when you mentioned the Samson story about, you know, like if you were like in the village with Samson and you're like, hey, this guy's acting crazy, but if I cut his hair, you know, because that was Samson. Like, again, I didn't get into like the full story. Samson was crazy. Like, Samson was out there, like at his wedding, he was out there causing problems. And he like beat some guys up. He took some foxes. He tied their tails together and lit them on fire so that they could run through the field. He was out there banging prostitutes.
To get his power back.
Yeah, he was out there banging prostitutes. Like, Samson was a wild boy. So, like, again, like, that when you said that, I laughed because I was like, that was Samson. Samson was he wasn't like beloved by everybody. No.
Well,
like,
it's not like he was Batman. Like, I am vengeance. Like, no, dude, you are the Joker, and we can't stop you.
Yeah, Samson was problematic. But to your question. Of course, I don't believe God has a chosen group of people. That was part of the reason why I was like, I just can't buy this stuff here because, again, it's like, for me to believe that the master of the universe, the Alpha and the Omega, the one who made everything, why would he need to choose a chosen group of people? It doesn't make any sense. And if I buy the Bible's narrative, right, because before I deconstruct it, because again, I'm not an atheist. Like when I say I deconstruct it, what I mean is the biblical narratives I no longer believe as presented. So that's out the window. But even when I was still a believer in the Bible, Jesus made the whole chosen thing weird, right? If God was always going to send his son to die for everybody, why would you need a chosen group of people? In fact, if after Jesus' death and resurrection, right, now that we're all saved, okay, so what happened to the chosen people now? Like, it wasn't making sense from there. And so I was like, like, I'm not buying what this book is selling me. And to your point, you cannot believe a group of people are chosen without believing, whether you are conscious of it or subconsciously, that their life has more value than your own life. And I'll be damned if I say that there's a group of people that their lives are more valuable than my life because they happen to be born a certain group and I happen to be born a different group. No, absolutely not.
I couldn't agree with that sentiment more purely. Like, that's the truth. And that's the dichotomy we're dealing with socially, is there is a mechanism politically, socially, economically that's so entrenched in highlighting those divisive, immutable characteristics because weaponizing them, capitalizing on them is so strong. I mean, I could turn an entire election on reminding you of your whiteness. I could win you. Like, why wouldn't I do that then? And so it preys on the weakest, most savage instincts of our humanity. Now, with that all being said, I want to bring it back to kind of something we touched upon earlier, but more directly than Cruel Philosopher, where do you then come out on something like this, the action Bible? Like, are we pro action Bible?
So here's the problem with this Bible here, right? because I get what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to make the Bible more appealing to, this generation, add some colors. But again, it looks too much like a comic book. And if it's too much like a comic book, I think you run the risk of people viewing it the way they view other comic books. Like, this is not real, right? Like,
right.
It's like Superman's, like Batman's, like Spider-Man. And if you are an actual Christian, I don't know if you want to run that risk.
Right.
And to a certain degree, I feel like the Bible is supposed to be boring, right? Like part of the fun, no, seriously, part of the fun is getting to a point where you're mature enough, where your comprehension skills are good enough, where you can, to your point, read Old English, and you don't have to even read the Old English anymore because they have so many different versions of the Bible. They have the English Standard Version, they have the New International Version, they have the amplified version, right? Of course, the King James. But even with those newer versions, they might use modern language, but some of the concepts and the metaphors are still complicated for you to understand. But I think that's part of the journey, is getting yourself to a point where, you know what? I'm smart enough now. I can read at a level now where I can actually understand the Bible. Part of the problem that we have today is, I don't know if you know this, but I think last I checked, the average reading level, the average American reads at like an 8th grade reading level. And an 8th grade reading level is not enough for you to understand the Bible, which might be why so many Christians don't read the Bible. But they should read the Bible. If you're a Christian, I'm someone who thinks even if you're not a Christian, you should read the Bible, in part because the Bible also helps explain the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. It was the book that our founders used when they were crafting their documents. And it's kind of hard sometimes to understand where they were coming from, how they were looking at certain things, if you don't look at the Bible, right? Like you can even see the parallels between the way that the Israelites set up their judicial systems and the way that we have our judicial systems in America. There are a lot of parallels that you're seeing. You're like, I see how they got from A to B. So I think as an American, if you want to understand your country, the history of your country, and just for, like, again, the moral lessons, it's kind of like reading Greek mythology, where you don't have to believe the Greek story, but the lessons are impactful because they get, like, if you're like me and you believe that these stories were written by men, what they do is they provide you into the souls of men, what we're capable of, what previous generations were trying to warn their people about the nature of man, right? How we can fall so easily, what to be careful of, what to value. And I think all of these, for all of those reasons, I think the Bible is very important.
So, not to totally pivot away from this, but you've kind of opened the door to another interesting conversation. Hopefully, for the atheists and God haters out there, hopefully we haven't turned them off too much with our Bible talk here. But to pivot a little bit, when you did the live stream about the Bible, you acknowledged how I'm reading the whole thing, and there was a very funny point you made, and I hope you don't get upset that I highlight it, because you said it with pride, as you should. But you were like, man, I need to read more books because I didn't even read more than what my 2 hands, maybe even one. And every person that's like, that's not a lot, or you could do more, they all read 0. At best, 1. I think, like, what's crazy is I think about my mom and my grandma when me and my sister were little kids and we were going to the pool and stuff, and book clubs, and there's still book clubs. I'm not ignorant, but like the culture of reading a book every couple weeks. Like, we, on our live show, we talked about Harry Potter. And I mean, try explaining to a modern 13-year-old that there were 13-year-olds that stood outside for 48 hours for the new Harry Potter release. Nobody would do that.
Nope.
They would just wait for the Thursday night midnight. I would wait in line for the midnight show for the movie, right? So here's an interesting concept, dude. We're being plugged into AI. I'm a strong, functioning member of society, and I refuse not to acknowledge and concede audibly, broadcasting, how much stronger AI has made me. I can't wait for this summer. We're doing these live shows on Sunday where every Sunday we're watching a themed series of AI videos. This past week was DC Comics.
What's up, boys? We're here at Arkham. This is the loony bin where they keep all the f***ing whack jobs. I think Joker's bitch ass is still in here, so we're gonna pay him a quick visit.
We made it inside, looking for Joker's cell. Pretty sure his freaky ass got tossed in here for gooning in public.
Found Joker. We're trying out his new strain of laughing gas he's been working on. I gotta say, it's some good shit.
We're going to have, you know, Bigfoot, history, like, see, it's all, and these are just Joe Blow meme accounts at home making cinema value 10-minute movies. That's the future. We're all going to be able to do it. It's only going to be easier. I need to write a letter that's going to be put in as an affidavit in court. And ChatGPT did 85% of it. I went to law school. I'm a strong writer. I had ChatGPT do all the heavy lifting, and I just put the ornaments on the tree. I just dolled it up. So here is something that probably is the Antichrist, probably going to bring the end of humanity. And yet, at least in this little window in time before it takes over like Starlink and eats us, it is like the greatest tool available to us. Mm-hmm. So we're human. We're animals that are always evolving, Darwinism. And if you don't evolve with it, you'll be left behind. So acknowledging that we're going in a more technological, computer-esque efficiency future, okay? I have a friend that used to run the producing here, and he would say, I got like 40 books in this year. Whoa. But they were all audiobooks. All right, so a podcast, I claim, is like an audiobook, but it's improvised, right? Like, especially if you're listening to a Jordan Peterson, a Dave Smith, pick the person that you find a strong intellect, even though they're improvising. Like, if you were to listen to Socrates speak for 3 hours, you are being edumacated. It may not be, you know, Plato's allegory, but it's Plato for 3 hours, and you're thinking and you're growing, and it's just as if you consumed a chapter of his book. So do you look at my friend and go, well, don't get ahead of yourself. You consumed 40 bundles of content, but you didn't do the action of reading. Then I double back and go, well, then how important is the action of reading? What is reading other than your ability to take in comprehensive, dense symbols and extract dense messages, right? But that only happened because I wasn't able to provide you the more effective communication that takes less digestion and math equation, even though it's milliseconds. You read the cat ran down the road, you scan it, and it's in. It was almost instant. But that almost instant is still slower than me telling the cruel philosopher the cat ran down the road. So if I put it less in the human sense, we're this organic computer. You think of a muscle, you go, well, if you don't keep flexing that muscle, you're going to lose the muscle. At the same time, Darwinism in me must push back and go, well, how important is that? How important is my arms muscle if all I'm using is my leg? Let's take a handicapped cripple kid that has like broken elbows or broken knees. So he's wheelchair bound. That dude can lift the two of us, no problem. We can also deadlift more than him. Well, guess what? He's not using his legs, so what is the purpose of the ability to deadlift? But then you go, well, but you would probably rather be able to walk than use the chair. So that becomes like efficiency. Now we're having an efficiency dialogue. So I cherry on top my point with this. If we were to think of it in a computer sense, think of this organic, me and you organic computers. Let's think of it in a technological metallic computer hard drive sense. If you were thinking of it a real computer, not us organic computers, and you had a lens right? Camera lens that extracts the message, computes the message, digests it into whatever the logic equations action dictates. So it reads red light, digests that red light means open door, and then it opens the door. However, what if you had a direct data stream from the red light to the hard drive? I'm skipping. Why do I need to continue? Obviously, the lens is harder. It's old hardware. That's the old world. And we're working harder and harder to keep the lens updated and available. Why? When it seems like maybe the lens is less effective than a direct data stream. The direct data stream being audio and the lens being visual, reading, and then logic, like mathematically digesting. So I threw a lot at you, and so I'll give you the floor. But simply put, my question is, could it be that with the next futuristic steps in this evolution of humanity, that maybe trying to flex that muscle is the waste of time? Because while we are trying to keep a dead art alive, producer Brian got 40 books, and I'm still trying to fill my hands.
So, to your point, because this is a fascinating conversation, I'm someone who is, generally speaking, I'm in the pro technology camp, right? I believe that if we look at history, most technological advances have, it's made us healthier, it's made us safer, it's made us smarter. It's, to your point, jobs that might have taken, all day long, we can do in half the time now, right? Like, just imagine how life was before the washing machine, right, or the dryer, or the iron, or the various other pieces of technology, right? And so I'm generally speaking in the pro technology camp, right? And to your point about information, I definitely believe that as it pertains to information, making information as easy as possible for or offering alternative pathways to accessing information is a net positive. Everyone is not that good of a reader, right? Even my language is horrible. Everyone doesn't read that well, right? Some people, they acquire information better or quicker by listening to information. For some people, like we're recording a video here, it's visual, right? Like for me, I barely read instructions anymore if I have something to put together. I go to YouTube and I Google, hey, YouTube, how do you do X, Y, and Z, right? Why? It's easier and, to your point, faster if I watch somebody either do it themselves or explain it than sometimes reading an actual diagram. So we should be pro, making all of these different avenues for people to kind of access information. I think this is all a net positive. All of this is good, is great. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, as it pertains to AI, and you brought this up. Now, of course, everyone says about the latest technology that this could change everything and be the end of humanity. I'm aware of that. However, eventually we're gonna be right.
Right.
Right? Like, so at some point, somebody's gonna say that, and it's not hyperbole, it's the truth. and AI has all of the breadcrumbs around it that to your point, I use AI all the time. I use AI for my job. I use it to help me craft emails, draft emails. I use it to help me brainstorm. I use it to help me come up with descriptions for videos. I use it to help me cook. I use AI a lot. But even I'm aware that this technology, depending on where it goes, how fast things can develop, can kind of spin out of control for a variety of reasons, right? Reason number one, we have various AI companies. And so from a purely capitalist perspective, in a world in which people don't have an unlimited amount of money, you have to kind of sell your AI service in comparison to somebody else's, right? Why should I buy a subscription to Grok over ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, whatever, right? So all of these companies are incentivized to come up with the latest, most efficient AI. And, I don't doubt that for some of these companies, cutting corners around safety or making sure that this AI doesn't grow into this model that hates humans, is not really high on their priority list, right? So that's
Right.
problem number one. Problem number two is country versus country, right? So you have the contest amongst companies in America, but you also have the contest between the different countries. The two obvious ones: the U.S., China. Both of these countries, they want to have AI that far exceeds the other. Why? AI is going to be used, like we use it for like our own personal reasons. Countries will be using it for warfare. They'll be using it to solve problems, right? Who knows? Space travel, right? The ways in which countries can use this technology, AI, are literally limitless. And I think both the U.S. and China, they are very aware that if the other gets a large jump on the AI, it can set the other country back literally hundreds of years where they could never catch up, depending on how this goes, right? And again, because of that, I think both countries will be more focused on dominating the other than they will safeguarding humanity from the potential downsides of potentially creating an AI model that is, sentient, that doesn't really care about human beings, right? Like, there are risks to this. I think as of right now, it's too early to tell which way things are headed. Again, I use it all the time. I use AI to interpret my medical results sometimes, right? Yeah, I'm trusting these doctors. So this sounds like a cop out, but we really don't know which way the train is headed right now. I don't think.
I completely agree. So we don't know if we're headed down a unsafe road or if maybe the powers that be actually do have enough handle on this that we're not in danger. At the same time, it's kind of like, the creation of guns. The toothpaste is out of the tube. You're not putting it back in. The technology exists. So now it is some sort of a space race to try to be the leader in that field. But at the same time, it exists and it isn't going away. So it's developing a way of living with it. Now, kind of keep it, because I do think there is a philosophical conversation to be had here. Less about AI. That's been had 10 times every which way. The bigger conversation I want to have is when we are like, dude, it's not going to happen to you and me. We're just two old heads that are never going to let it happen. But there will be kids, whether it's our kids or our kids' kids, but I don't think it's going to go past them much further than that will be hell-bent and surely comfortable throwing a chip in their head, throwing a hard drive in their forearm, being literally waist down, Usain Bolt fast with cyber robot legs. I don't see it going much longer before we are totally integrated. Dude, the iPhone is that. The iPhone is the closest your and I's generation is going to let it ever become. This thing I'll have glasses on. I'm going to have Meta pants on. I'm going to have everything but going in my bloodstream. But this thing is already the computer plugged in my brain. I just have to take it everywhere I go. Oh shit. Here's your mom 15 years ago. If you didn't have your head screwed down, you'd lose it. For how many times I lose my iPhone? She's right. So like, this is my head, and I do lose it. Like, we're all that person. So keeping us grounded with, like, this weird place we're in. We're the organic computer merging into the cyborg, this hybrid between computer and this bionicle between the two. Do you get down on O'Brien for going, I literally did 4 times more books than you. You're dumber than me. Because I did it in a more effective way. But dude, I think the perfect analogy that runs right along stream is this. Our clocks. okay, are you a lazy bum for looking at an analog clock or like a regular faced 12-digit clock? Well, no, that's the superior minded one. I have to do math 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Okay, and I'm doing all this math in my head, and I'm a super clock reader. And that was actually the evolutionary step past the sundial. So, or the sundial. So, did the person with the sundial go, you're actually making yourself dumber because you're not outside in the elements waiting for the sun to come back out, even though it's raining and we're cooked. We literally don't know what time it is. You're dumber because you're in the futuristic. Well, no, they're actually more effective. They're more accurate. And we give credence to a 12-numbered face clock because you're doing math. But the second it became just numbers on your phone that just say it's 7:25. Okay, well, you're the dumb one. You're letting that do the thinking for you. You were supposed to have a whole multiplication table full of fives trying to figure out what time it is right now. And while you're getting the time in 2 seconds, you're also making yourself dumber because you're no longer doing the practice of that math. What about cursive? I've sat here and said, I find value in teaching cursive. Why? I was taught cursive begrudgingly. And now there's a whole field of English. It's literally in your native tongue. And you don't even know how to read it because it's in a style that was never taught to you. But at the same time, my grandma, bless her soul, is dead. So there's no one writing me notes in cursive anymore. So it's also a dying art because the people that crafted the art aren't crafting it anymore. My mom and dad know how to write it. My mom and dad definitely know how to read it, but they don't do it. It's not as effective. It's not as easy. It's quick stroke of a hand. Do it just the regular way everybody else knows. So another art that's being lost. So keeping it grounded in a more direct question, do you think there is a superior value in reading that we need to continue fighting to push onto people? Or do you think there's a certain point, is it now? Is it in 10 years when the chip's plugged into the back of my head? Is it when my entire half of my skull is a computer before it's, you don't have to read anymore, just download the podcast, download the audiobook and get it in 2 hours or 5 hours instead of, because like you said, sometimes somebody throws it on. I can literally clean my house and consume the allegory of the cave. But if I wanted to read it as, I'm straw manning a potential argument.
Yeah.
But like if somebody were to make the argument that, well, we should continue to read. Well, I didn't get to work out. I didn't get to clean my office. My laundry isn't done. I had to sit there and do a whole digesting of symbols to get the message. I could have accomplished more and gotten it quicker. So what are your thoughts on like reading? Do we need a fight for it? Or at what point do we get to just throw in the towel and go, no, the future is audio. Get in that game.
We should fight for reading for as long as it's relevant, if that makes sense, right? Like, for example, there are still some things, because I listen to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks, I do all of that stuff, right? There are certain books that I noticed I couldn't listen to via audio because I wasn't retaining as much as I did when I read the actual book for some reason, right? So certain books I can listen to and I can retain pretty much everything that I heard. I've noticed that books that might be a little bit more dense, or they might use language that I don't use in my day-to-day normally. I have to actually read those books because otherwise I won't maintain the information. I imagine I'm not the only one that suffers from that.
I agree.
And so for as long as people are publishing books, for as long as information is still being delivered through like written content, I do think we should keep pushing into the reading of books. Now, to your point though, it wouldn't shock me if in the future, whether that's 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, you would no longer have to read to know or listen to know. You could literally just know, right? Like by just, to your point, downloading this software, you know how to do all your math at 10 years old, right? You don't have to learn how to do math. You can literally like put this piece of software into your hand or to your head, whatever. You know the math, right? You know the science, you know the history, all the information that you would have to know. Because really learning, that's what learning is you you seek information, and you, through repetition, whether that's reading it constantly, reciting it, doing homework, you hope to memorize the information so that you can recall it when you need it. Well, if you can kind of just download the information and recall straight from, the disk, right? Or if the disk is able to write it permanently into your brain, then you don't need to learn it really. You just need to buy the disk. It wouldn't shock me if we reached the point where, because of the rich and the poor, you had kind of two systems, right? Where people who are rich and can afford to buy the disc would just download information, and they use all their extra time to do other things. And those that were poor and couldn't afford it, they'd spend their time continuing to actually learn it the way that we do, through like repetition and homework and trying to memorize things of that nature. That's kind of how I see the future going, if I'm being honest.
So I appreciate that point, because there is a strong point in refutation to my kind of presentation there, that you retain more and it has more of an impact. I kind of got lost in the fight for preserving like a muscle, use it or lose it. We're going to see cognitive decline everywhere we allow Chat GPT or AI to do the thinking for us.
But the question is, does it matter though? Like you made the point earlier about script, right? Schools don't really teach script anymore because people don't write; we type.
Right? Yeah,
so
even more so. And again, you can literally hit a button that allows you to just talk your whole thought out, and it writes it for you. So speaking of allowing AI to do the thinking for us, one of the things I wanted to touch upon, retaining the information more, talking about kind of keeping this downloaded in your memory. But then if we become these cyborgs and it's just automatically being downloaded, it is your memory. It's there. I asked ChatGPT, as all would, the god of our life, how faulty is human memory? Because that's a major theoretical piece in like the legal system, right?
Yep.
The human testimony is one of the highest weighted pieces of evidence, but it's also the least reliable, most flawed, right?
Yeah.
It's the most relied upon, but it's the most flawed, which is crazy. So again, asking ChatGPT, how faulty is human memory? Human memory is surprisingly unreliable and prone to distortion, even though we often trust it with confidence. Here's how and why memory can be faulty. So we understand the reconstructive, not reproductive. This is memory. We don't record experiences like a video camera. Instead, we reconstruct memories each time, which introduce errors or bias. So there's fault, like through explanation. False memories. People can remember things that never happened, especially when influenced by suggestion. Misinformation. The effect of misinformation. New misleading information can alter previously stored memories. Source confusion, remembering information but forgetting and misattributing the source. Decay, memories fade over time unless reinforced. Interference, new memories can interfere with old ones and vice versa. Emotional distortion, strong emotions can distort details, e.g. during trauma, high stress, disdain for maybe the source of that memory. Confirmation bias, people tend to remember things that align with their beliefs and forget the rest. We could go into studies, how the Elizabeth Loftus experience showed that simple wording changes in questions, e.g. smashed versus hit, could alter the eyewitnesses' reports of car accidents. People have remembered meeting people or seeing objects based solely on suggestion, despite there never even being there. So when is memory more reliable? Memory is more accurate when the event is recent and emotionally neutral. That could apply to a book. The person is well rested, sober, paying attention. It really wouldn't work for me because the amount of book bindings I just fell asleep into the middle of trying to just get through grade school. I'm a human. There is no external suggestion or biasing afterwards. So again, as kind of Cruel Philosophr clearly knows, the memory is a malleable, fallible, and even though it feels stable and clear, it's best to think memory like a Wikipedia page. You can hit edit, and so can others. That
To your
being
point, real
said,
quick.
yeah, please.
To your point, it's part of the reason why, police, they try to interview witnesses as soon as possible. To your point about it being fresh, and people do think that memory is like having like a camcorder, when it's more like having a camera that takes pictures, right? Because pictures lie all the time, right? If I take a picture of, let's say we took a snapshot of this screen right here, right? And if somebody asks you like a week from now, what were you talking about at this exact moment? You might remember. If somebody asks you 2 months from now, you'd be like, it gets less and less, fresh in your mind, because to your point, you introduce thoughts, you can change things around. It happens so often that you ever had a thought on a memory and you were questioning, like, did that happen that way?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Did it?
Or how many times I'm
sure.
fully convicted it happened this way, or this was the case, and I was completely wrong.
Yep. See? Exactly. So it happens all the time, to your point.
Oh, all the time. But when we become honest with ourselves, conceding the flaws of memory, but also, guess what? That's the only hard drive I'm working off of. So I got to work with the deck I'm dealt, no matter how many problems I have with my deck. So kind of focusing in then on what I'm left with, the game controller I'm playing with. When we're talking about memory and we're trying to consider the act of reading, your point was suggesting, as I totally initially agreed and still do, reading allows me to retain more. When I consider retention of an important piece of information, and that's what we find important of books. It's conveying stories, messages, life lessons, important, valuable knowledge that I can take with me moving forward. I want to retain that. I want to retain as much of it as possible. I also went on a little bit of a diatribe earlier, trying to lightly and through jest propose the possibility that maybe a podcast is a book. It's an improvised book, but it's a book. Well, I got to walk that back. I got to be a little bit honest with myself. I can do my mulch and listen to Bill Maher debate Charlie Kirk in a podcast because I'm half there and I'm half playing in the dirt. And when I miss some of that stuff, it isn't going to kill me because I'm really getting the gist of it. Some of it's just BSing. And you know what? That's a little bit more contextual a debate. Let's be even more honest with ourselves. Listen to like a Tim Dillon podcast or your Theo Von podcast. Theo Von interviewed the president for an hour, and we kind of talk about 3 minutes of it. Hey, I was on cocaine like a raccoon, or whatever the hell he said. And that's all we talk about. Yeah. So here's an hour-long podcast, and I wanted to make the argument that this is a modern-day book with the President of the United States, and the social retention from that book is a 1-minute clip about cocaine and raccoons. Okay, well, I didn't retain much, but then we got to also be honest with ourselves, there really wasn't much more to retain. Going back to Joe Rogan, when Joe Rogan mattered before he sold out to the and was like an actual podcast, This guy would just find some scientist that he found brilliant and interesting. He'd sit down for 3 hours. I'd listen to it in transit to work 6 times, back and forth. And I got out of 3 hours, 20 hard points that grew me as a person. But here's what's crazy about a book is a book doesn't have the piddly little bullshit in between. Yeah, we talked about the prime minister here, and then we talked about economy, but in the middle, we were laughing about Labubu stuffed animals. Yeah, and when you were giggling about Beanie Baby, modern day Beanie Babies, I was doing more digging in the mulch.
Mm-hmm.
A book isn't that. The book isn't improvised. The book is everything boiled down to the most important pieces. So while I begrudgingly go, but I don't want to have to sit there and focus for that whole time, every single one of those words is pertinent to the overall message. Also, there's less fat to boil down, so everything there is worthy of retention. So if I took that same thing, plugged it into an audiobook world, and I'm back to playing in my mulch, and I'm listening to the allegory of the cave or, Plato's allegory, whatever, I'm not getting it all.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? For the human that is convinced themselves, I don't have the time to read, I don't do the reading, getting some of it is so much better than none of it. But I think defeating the premise I built up, there's so much more value in reading it because I think, so clearly there's 2 sides to this coin. Podcasts versus books, all in the audio sense. A podcast is nothing compared to a book. Even if you took something like, I live so much in a social comedians dialogue podcast world. Take a step back, champ. There's a whole world of podcasting. When I look at like Serial, okay, that's probably a pretty big national true crime podcast most people have heard. Okay, Serial. Talk about a captivating, no fat, totally plugged in podcast about you're in New York, dude. Help me. What are those guys? The Central Park 5. That was it, right?
Oh, they did Central Park 5. Didn't they do Adnan too?
Dude, they did Cleveland. They were like, you want to see we're just going to pick out of the whole country one system just to prove you how corrupt it is. And they're like, Cleveland. And we're like, welcome home, Toto.
The Adnan one was the one where I found Serial, and I was like, this is pretty good.
Dude, Serial's awesome. Wouldn't we agree?
Yeah.
And I was able to consume that like a podcast, but admittedly, it is more like a book. Not a wasted word, but also, can we get real about books? Do you know one of my favorite books of all time is called The Gold Standard? I don't know if you've ever seen the Entourage, but there's this character named Ari Gold. What's that?
Is The Rock in that? The Entourage?
The Rock is in a football version of Entourage.
Oh, okay, got it.
So they after that did so much success.
Okay.
Mark Wahlberg and the gang did another version in a football world.
Got you.
But this is like 5 guys that are buddies, and one of them's a famous actor in LA. And his agent, Ari Gold, is this like spicy Jewish agent that is like totally, in a world of political correctness, so far from that. And that's what made him, the funny comedic relief to the whole show. But everybody's great. Anyway, here is one of my favorite books is when the show ended, the last season, Ari Gold reaches his dream and he sells his company, and him and his wife fly to Italy, and he lives in Italy. And so here's a book, fiction, written as if this character who just now moved to Italy is sitting by his pool writing a book. So it's and like talk about meta. Here's an author who wrote the show, was a writer on the show. A writer is pretending to be a fictional character writing this book from a totally fictional world where, like, I'm living in Italy after I just sold my company, and this guy doesn't even exist, and he's giving life advice, the gold standard, and it's just be a man, get in shape, professional goals. Like, it's like any self-help book. It was so motivating, and it's one of the funniest books I ever read. It's not even real. Like, the guy doesn't even exist. So here's a book I'd push upon someone. I don't think there's much wasted words, but you could totally get the important bits from an audio version. But we only think of book, like in this conversation, we're doing the real philosophical, like take a step back and brainstorm. We're doing this free marketplace of ideas a disservice by only exclaiming books in this like dense philosophical sense. Would you take Kant's imperative over Tim Dillon podcast episode? It's like, dude, those are not the same. Talk about like the Philosopher's Stone in Harry Potter versus Tim Dillon, a totally fictional wizard versus, you know, a fat gay dude that's just trying to do comedy. Two totally different. Like, that's a little bit more realistic to the conversation. I threw a lot at you. I'd like to get your thoughts before I, you know, walk it further.
No. So again, to your point, like, I think maybe it's the fact that we're using, because Serial. Let's go back to Serial, right? Serial, right?
Yes.
You said book, or like it could be like an audio book, which I find interesting because for me, Serial hit me more like a TV show. Like I was listening to a TV program, right? Episode after episode after episode.
Experiencing it.
Exactly.
Different voices. It took you there.
It had music in the background. It had, right? And so even when we talk about podcasts, it's like, okay, well, which podcast are you talking about, right? Podcast is like this umbrella term, but really, like the type of show that we do here is totally different from Serial, which is totally different from like Dateline, which is like the audio of the TV, which is different from like Serial, which is like a whole production, which is different from like, you know, you got the news podcast, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, it just gives you the breaking news, right? So all of this doesn't have to be discussed in the same way. Again, I think a book, as of right now, where we stand today, a book is hard to replace because certain things can only really be conveyed well to me in a book, right? Where you sit, you read it, you're confused, you stop, you think about it. Like, I wonder how I think about, you know, X, Y, Z, right? Like, and you can't get that from a podcast or a lecture, right? Where it might not be, you know, you can't really stop the train, right? Now, on a podcast, of course, you could pause. But really, who want to be pausing all day on a podcast? You like a book, you can read it, stop, highlight things that, you know, stick out to you. You can really make it your own as a consumer. And I think that's, you know, that is what makes books special. But again, we are heading to this point where you can gain a lot of information from non-book sources that is extremely relevant to your life through TV, documentaries, for example, right? Documentaries for a lot of people is how they learn a lot about, you know, historical events, other world events, and they can maintain a lot of information because it's a lot more interesting to them. So they pay more attention versus if they're reading a book or even listening to like a podcast, it might, you know, they might, you know, retain the information for like a day, maybe a week, but then it'll be gone. And so I think it kind of depends on the individual, you know, how they personally retain information that dictates the best medium for them to use to you know, for that information. You know, that's how I would describe it. Because again, I love podcasts, I love documentaries. You know, I just watched a documentary the other day about it was like the Night Stalker in California. This dude that was crazy. Just like, right, I loved it, and I never heard this guy ever. I'm like, how did I go all my life? And I'm a true crime kind of dude. Never heard of this guy.
Oh yeah,
committing this terror in California of all places. right? And the documentary or it was an episode, it was like a docuseries, was captivating. It caught my attention, and I remember this dude's name forever now.
Right. Well, it's also
So,
pretty catchy. The Night Stalker, long, pretty hair. He's getting girls in the streets. It's got Scorsese written all over it. Okay, so one of the things you triggered in me is here's another dynamic to another layer to the onion to peel back. Just looking at Harry Potter. All right, so here's a phenomena that before audio is accessible. Yeah, maybe at this time, I'm going a hard maybe. There were a couple iPods roaming around, but I'm going to hard say definitely Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, a couple of those earlier books in the series. There weren't iPods, but that evolution happened quick. And very early on, podcasting was an app that nobody filled up. It just sat there burdensome on every iPod, empty. But
isn't that so crazy?
Developed, well, and so
that is so crazy in hindsight.
Isn't that hilarious, dude? I could have been the one thing in everybody's app. Instead, I was on the school bus, pissed as shit that I'm looking at an application I'm never going to open.
That is the wildest part of it. We all had that same purple app. It was like, what the hell is this? And now look at it. It's crazy.
It's wild to think.
Crazy.
And what else is on our phone that we're just like, that's useless. And before it's going to be like, that's more important than my thumb.
I didn't use the books app in the iPhone until like a couple of years now. I never used that ever. I was like, why would I use this? And now I'm like, hell yeah.
I got my digital bookshelf full.
Yeah.
You should take a scroll. You should see what's hidden behind my digital bookshelf.
Yeah.
So Harry Potter, when it was in this, window in time, dominating a moment, then the landscape got larger. Now digital books, digital podcasts. Harry Potter's got to be one of the most listened to audiobooks, I have to assume. It's if it's not the most, it's up there with one of the most. It's definitely one of the most recognizable books of all time, and it's got to be up there with one of the highest consumed, I would think, in kind of any platform or any medium.
Last that I saw, I think it was second to the Bible.
Dude, okay, boom.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you're right.
Yeah.
Because we reported like in 2024, ironically, about how Harry Potter was committing like $2 billion to developing a cinematic audiobook with Audible. And it's coming out in 2026. So we're halfway there. It's almost out now.
And they got the series coming on HBO.
You know what? I'm gonna put a pin in that. You and I can touch upon that. I'll be curious to get your thought. We got to nerd out a little bit in today's episode.
I did. I got you.
So I'm definitely gonna touch upon that with you. But now you've got multiple series. You've got the book that people would wait outside for days. Now that's just like my records, dude. I love my vinyl records.
Mm-hmm.
I'm touching them much less than the Spotify that's playing the same song because I'm on the golf course, because I'm in my car. But I paid double for the new version of this just so I could say, look at, because we're birds. I like the flashy thing. I like to tuck it in my nest. I look at my physical record. So now the book more serves as a really awesome prop on my shelf, and I'm still probably going to consume the audiobook. Okay. They just put $2 billion into a cinematic audiobook. That would probably lead me to believe that the regular audiobook is gone. You're going to have a really sexy narrator voice, and then every single character is going to have an actor perform as Dumbledore himself. And I am Snape. Severus Snape.
I've been saying this was the proper way to use audiobooks, though. Like, for fiction. If you got characters, make it a whole thing. Like, there should be rain in the background. I should feel like I'm listening to a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's going to be the future.
Yeah.
So again,
I'm with you.
when you get to when Harry Potter, we're in this limbo where it's just, a nice Englishman reading you the book. Well, are you going to be less, critical of the effective way of consuming the medium, ergo audio, when it's this cinematic experience that just puts you there? I am in the wizarding world. I mean, at some point, I'm looking at you going, you're the fool. You are putting yourself to sleep, boring through this. And what? You retained 2 more words of their spell? Like, the whole thing's unimportant to begin with, and I had a lot more fun and was a lot more relaxed. So where it's even going makes the old world that we project value into, because I don't think it is illuminating value on its own. We're doing all the heavy lifting. I'm trying to convince the world it's still got value. It's not doing the convincing for itself. In that case, when you look at
explain that real quick. That you're trying to convince the world
reading, dude, we just spent a solid 40 minutes wrestling a back and forth tug of war of, it's kind of an old dead technology and we're kind of losing it, but there's all this other value. I retain it better and I keep my mind sharp. But but reading, me and you are thinkers.
Yeah.
I'd like to think of myself as a philosopher at heart as well.
Oh, definitely.
That's not the majority of people.
No.
So when you look at the majority of people and they go, I'm not grabbing a book. I'm telling you, you go, I'm embarrassed to say, I probably didn't even fill up all fingers of my hand.
I felt so
Your
bad.
whole audience that heard that was like, dude, mine's a fist. It's been a fist and it's staying a fist. It's a whopping 0.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we need to illuminate its value for it, it being reading itself. The conceptual concept, the concept of reading, I have to illuminate its value because it doesn't naturally do it itself. A teacher had to convince us reading was of value. You and I believed it. We saw the value in it. We grew with it. But there's a whole world of people that are surface level readers. They never really went beyond the forced reading they got from academics, no matter how far down academia they went. And they don't grab reading for itself. They only read 2 for $1, Doritos Locos Tacos for $5. That's it's the extent of my daily reading.
Yeah.
And so I look at that guy and I go, hey, I'm screaming from the hills. Reading's still important. And they go, reading itself has not convinced me it's important. So you and I are doing that illuminating for it. We're going, no, it's important. But reading isn't convincing anybody it's important because audio, because
video,
soon the Neuralink, all these other facets are going to be more convincing, more enticing. I'm more valuable than reading. It's more illuminating. It's more attractive. It's got the attention. So the problem is, how are you going to convince your grandkid? I swear to God, if you just open the Chamber of Secrets, you'll love it. And she's like, I am going to throw on the VR set.
Yeah.
And I am going to watch the snake eat Harry. Period.
You know what's so crazy about that,
Grandpa?
That you brought up? Because he's not lying. There's depending on what your age range of your listeners and watchers are, y'all don't understand what it was like in the middle of Harry Potter mania. I remember reading like the Order of Phoenix, having this book, and the book was like 800 pages, something like that. I'm reading it. I'm staying up late at night, like with a flashlight, reading underneath the covers. Like that's how captivated I was by her. I would bring the book with me to school, and then something about reading fiction and having your mind create the world that you're reading about. And part of me, why the movies were so good, was because they matched so much of what we thought about in our own minds. Like they got the casting just right and everything. But in my mind, the pictures I was painting, the way that, I was in my room reading, but I wasn't there no more. Like, that's what you're missing out on if you're not into books. And of course, I read way more nonfiction now than I do fiction. But I'm dipping my toe back into fiction, and it's again, it's like you like the a good writer, a good fiction writer, they're able to take you and draw you into their world and have your mind paint the picture where it don't even feel like reading no more.
Well, and an interesting, like, dude, these are the things most logical people would just kind of not concede, not admit. But the purpose of the Rethink Tank is to be vulnerable, transparent, and honest. And being completely honest, if we're going to talk about Harry Potter, we're going to talk about that window in time. Here's Cruel Philosophr, somebody at the peak of this exercise, a difficult exercise that people begrudgingly go through anymore. People try to resist as much as they can. He's talking about the Order of the Phoenix is what? The 5th, the 6th chapter. He's well into the books at night, flashlight, reading this. I need to be honest with my experience now, especially because Harry Potter had a very real impact on the way I look at books, or really fictional stories that eventually become adaptations.
Yeah.
I'm going to write down holes, so that becomes a closing part of my point. But
the movie holes?
What?
The holes?
Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that. I'm going to close with holes. Filling all the holes, starting with Harry Potter. I watched The Sorcerer's Stone. Here's a wild concept that your American dumb mouth needs to chew, consume, and swallow. They had a book called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and you're too moronic and Disney adult fictional land fantasy goo-goo baby that they needed to call it Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone because they didn't want to turn you off from making you think it might be a little bit more educational than a child's Disney film. Did you know that, Cruel Philosophr?
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. So the book in Europe, all of England, it's The Philosopher's Stone.
In America,
and because America is a bunch of dumbasses, we needed to call it The Sorcerer's Stone. We got magic and spells and unicorns and shit over here. And they're like, oh, my God, sign me up. So that's already what the market looks at you as. Yeah. And guess what? It worked. They were right. Dumb it down for the American. They'll chew it and they'll swallow it. Okay. I wasn't a big Harry Potter guy at first. I wasn't a book guy. By the 3rd book, they're making a movie of the 1st book, and the craze is at its height. 2001 is when Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone film was released. So in 2001, to keep in the wave of the hype, my dad's like, let's read it. You read it to me. So my sister, my mom, my dad were all in the bed, and I have to read this book aloud. Half of those words are made up by some transphobe, and I'm sitting here like chewing over it because in 2001, I was born in 1993. I'm 8 or 9 years old. So I'm a child, but I loved that book. And like you said, especially as a kid, there wasn't a lot else rumbling around up here. So I retained and hung on every word. Then I got a little crack of reality about how Hollywood works, or really just books are so much denser than a 2-hour film. At 8 years old, that isn't a compelling story. You're not convincing me. Make it 2 parts like you did the last movie. No. All right. But the piece I left with that really, again, I was 8, so this is a juvenile perspective. I got you. But at 8, I left everybody around us as we were leaving the theater was getting a kick out of this little kid ranting to his dad about all the good shit it left out. I'm like, how do you just show up and the troll is dead in the bathroom? We didn't even get to all the scene. And I'm rattling all these parts that were left out. Some would say, here's the Y in the road, kid. Which lane are you going to choose? And I chose the wrong one. So just reflect on human nature. The why in the road was, all right, you don't like that the movie left out 30% of the story, 30% that you found somewhat valuable. So you either now decide I have to read every book that's turned into a movie to get its true intent and the full picture, or you can be God's damned human flawed species and take the very human lazy route and go, well, then I'm just only watching the movies because I'm going to be heartbroken every time and it's going to be a completely different story. We see that all the time when movies get adapted. Let me close my thought out with Holes. So in second grade, I read Holes. At the end of the school year, the movie comes out. Again, divine timing. And it was one of the greatest books. Guess what? Huckleberry Finn, all the other dumb shit an English teacher made me read, don't remember them. I was literally talking to my dad about this recently because I'm working with an author who's a Mark Twain. She did like a biography on Mark Twain and a lot of his work, and I want to learn more. At the same time, I'm like, Dad, which are his books? And he's like, I don't know. And we're confusing them. It's like they've all like become a like just a giant, I don't know, blob of stories. I really don't remember all the details. Gadsby, it's all just one big blah. But I remember bits of it. It was also a good exercise forcing me to read. But Holes stood with me the most, stood the test of time of all these forgotten books and stories and authors because it was a real impactful book. Like the book inside itself, to a kid, it resonates with a second grader as much as it resonates with a 25-year-old.
Phenomenal book.
Phenomenal. And
book.
the fact that the movie did it so much justice, I thought it really, I mean, singing the songs in the car to like every element of that story was hit. And again, you've heard my narrative before. I feel I grew up in an age where we conquered racism and then we got pissed that it was actually building community against people we needed to control. So we had to retrain racism back into them. But like, there's a story that pushed the transcending of those lines. You didn't need to make Stanley Yelnats a black woman for me to walk away with the power of the racial message that was just touched upon. It wasn't the focal point. It wasn't even the story, but it had a huge impact. In fact, if you're going to say there was any liberal bullshit agenda that found itself in a movie 25 years ago, it was the blurring of Zero's background, right? Zero was never like a culturally ambiguous kid from a culturally ambiguous grandma, and that kind of played there. You also didn't need to make her full-blown black, full-blown Asian. It was just kind of there.
Yeah.
And you also didn't need to say, look at this black kid Zero becoming best friends with the main character who's now a black woman, Stanley Yelnats. No. And you know why I didn't look at like the guy I share the screen with right now as someone different than me? Because I watched stories that didn't make these characters different from each other. And so here we just had a full dialogue about a movie and a book that holds a lot of social influence, a lot of impact on my life, your life. We lived them totally separate from each other in different states, in different communities, but it had an impact on both of us in two different mediums. And I do believe the reason Holes is one of the strongest examples we could draw upon in this conversation is because it stayed the truest to the book. So here was the most effective way of consuming a story, and it still stayed true to the dense meat.
That's why I like the movie. Like, the reason why I like the movie was because, like you, I read the book first. I think most kids read the book first before the movie came out. Yeah. And then you watch the movie. Hey, I love the song "Digging Up Somehow." That was my song growing up.
I'd still bump that now.
Yeah. So I love the song.
I think I'm adding that to my golf list, playlist this year for sure.
But yeah, to your point, you have the diversity of the characters, but their external diversity wasn't a point of commentary. It was like, yeah, like the point was we all out here digging these damn holes. Like we all out here as punishment digging these holes. It is what it is, right? Yeah, and I love, you know what? I was one book, because you mentioned that often the book is like a lot better than movies, which is true. That's how I was when I finally read Gone Girl a couple of years this year. I think I read Gone Girl, the book, right? I read it, and I was like, "This is an incredible book." And I was talking to my female coworker about this book I was reading, and she was like, "You know, there's a movie a movie with Ben Affleck." I was like, "Really?" So I got home, I watched the movie. I hated the movie. I was like,
two different things.
This movie sucks in comparison to the book. The book was so much better. Like what the characters did makes sense. I feel like the movie was rushed. Like I was like, this don't make. I don't like the character choices, how they flip certain things, you know. And to your point, the reason the best movies are the movies or TV shows that stick close to the source material of the book. It's why Game of Thrones, when they was going with the books, everyone loved it. Once they kind of, you know, when they ran out of source material, there was no more books left. That's when like the show kind of went, you know, people was like, all right, this writing is kind of, you know, woo boy.
Well, so, I love the way you responded. And as I'm listening to your point, thinking to myself, all right, so where does this leave us? Like, what is the conclusion we can draw upon? What do we take upon this long-winded theorizing of reading versus other mediums of consumption, which seem to be quicker, seem to be, impactful, but maybe not as impactful. Mm-hmm. Maybe, it's trimming off some of the fat, but also some of the important meat, and you're not getting the full picture. With that whole consideration, I think earlier I said the name when I was talking about Joe Rogan, and I can assure you I beeped it out. So coming up here, bringing it back to the 3-letter agencies that control our existence. Mm-hmm. I got to say, dude, we know that the Pentagon gives like 15 to 25% of their budget a year to Hollywood for propaganda purposes, controlling narratives, creating realities, perceptions. So I got to say, man, I think I did a good job of doing my best of creating a steel man for both sides. Mm-hmm. And the side that I resonated with the most is I do think at some point, you agreed, at some point we're going to abandon books and move on to this new futuristic medium. My question was then being, well, when do we pull that ripcord? When do we see that happen? I think you said it. It's just going to naturally, the plug will be pulled and we'll be permanently in this other world. Well, I got to say, you want to be at the tip of the spear, man. Ride the wave. Don't be caught up in the current. And I say that because I think, dude, that time is now. Like the CIA, damn it, those 3 letters, they are putting all their time and money not in books anymore, dude. Like their whole budget, that they're taking half of your paycheck, my paycheck, and the listener's paycheck, and they're like, 30% of it is going to movies. How many in books? We give it to the Washington Post. Like that's, I don't think they're doing it in books anymore. And it's because it's behind us. We're already there, and be with it or get left behind.
I don't know if you remember. I think it was one of the live streams. I don't think it was a podcast. I think it was when I was on one of your live streams, and I made this point, and people laughed, but I was serious, that if you want to follow trends in technology, always look at what's happening in porn. Always. Porn is always the first. Again, porn had the magazine, right? So you had the written content first in porn. Then you had the cassette, and then we had cassettes. Then you had the DVDs. Then we had the DVDs, right? And then you had the websites, right? And online. So whenever you see porn, and porn already started with like the 3D porn, the glasses and everything, right? So porn is the guide to what is going to happen everywhere else. Again, people talk about the porn industry, and I'm not pro or anti the porn industry. What I will tell you is the porn industry is very, very innovative because they're looking to try to, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? They're driven by what's next in ways in which, regular Hollywood and, entertainment is not, they're not driven in the same way, right? Porn is always looking for, okay, what are new ways that I can make people horny and get their money? That's all all day long. They think about it 24/7. Porn is the way. And so, me and you are right here that, it's going to happen gradually. It's going to happen out of nowhere. It's kind of already happening in a way. Like, look at music, right? You used to be able to buy actual records. To your point, vinyls, right? We go from vinyls to smaller vinyls. From smaller vinyls to CDs. From CDs, we had tapes. Right? Then from tapes, we had CDs, right? From CDs, what happened? We had MP3 players where you had to either buy the music file or, I'm not proud of this, you go to like LimeWire or whatever and just illegally download
I'm proud of
right?
that.
Yeah.
Take it to the bank. Statute of limitations and charge a minor. I did it with a smile.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of computer bugs. That was my dad's problem.
Yeah. But you owned the music. Think about it. It was yours. Once it was on your computer, it belonged to you.
Own it. I possessed it.
Yeah. But it's yours. No one could take it away from you. It was in your possession. Then what happened? Streaming, right? We signed up to pay for a subscription and you could download it on your phone. But again, it gets taken away. Like if they get rid of the song on the streaming, it's gone, right? So we all signed up and we don't remember it. We signed up for never owning something, but paying to access it.
You will own nothing and be happy.
And here's the tricky part. Oh, what a freaky part, right? If you look at like certain movies and stuff, they've already gone and started to change certain things in previous movies. Like there was a clip from Lilo and Stitch where they showed how, it's on Disney Plus, but they went and they changed one of the scenes in the movie about like because it was dangerous. I think it showed like one of the kids get into like a washing machine and they changed that scene. The Home Alones, I think they've gone back and like gotten rid of Donald Trump in them, right?
Yeah, so Lilo and Stitch, they got rid of the plane crashing into the building because of 9/11.
Yeah, so they're already going back. Again, if you own something, those things are there forever. If you don't own it, they can go in, make changes. We just spoke about memory not being all reliable. You'll forget things that used to be. You'll be like, I think something's different about this film. And it changes that fast. So I've actually been thinking about and doing more of this, of actually buying things. Like everyone knows, I bought my Dragon Ball Z collection. I got the whole DVD set. Where it's inconvenient, but I'm so concerned that we are headed to a time where we're expected not to own things. And this goes into the books and the writing, right? If you wrote something down on like a paper, or if you typed it and printed it out, it exists in the world. No one can get rid of it. No one can take, like, of course they can burn it and stuff, right? But for a fact, I did this. If that goes away, does it exist?
Here's the thing, dude. What's crazy is you still, like, not to just totally devolve back into like reading is the lens of like picking up the light of symbols on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. But you say you write it down, no one can take it away from you. Totally sidebar that I promise we'll come back to this. I'm scrolling on TikTok and there's this WWE wrestler who, and I'm going to toe this line lightly so I don't cause any triggers in the algorithm. The guy goes on the dark web and he's surfing a website with shoes that have red splashes all over them, buys the pair of shoes, and they come with a VHS, right? So you're kind of filling in the blank of like, shoes are covered in red splatters, and I'm assuming this is a video of how those red splatters got there, but who knows? So here's like a well-off WWE wrestler that's trying to, drum up some content. Like, is this BS? I've been reading on it. It seems like, there's a potential that this is like a phony website and the thing was just for show. Could be. But it had a lot of people captivated. But again, the WWE is totally fake. So what's to believe like some content creator for them isn't trying to drum up some, and he got our attention. He's got me talking about him, right? But what totally side piece to this whole escapade was him trying to hunt down a VHS that could play this video. So let's say you own, let's just say in Snow White, it's this whole story of like the girl runs away, gets lost in the woods, gets taken care of by 7 dwarfs. But part of the story was she like drop kicks a dwarf and now there's only 6. Like, if that's one of them,
yeah,
and you have the OG, and then Walt Disney walks in and he's like, I'm not going to make her black yet, but I'm going to get rid of the drop kicking of the dwarf. I just find that wrong.
A bridge too far.
And you're like, well, I've got the edition that has a drop kicked dwarf. Okay. For that to have any value to you, the device that reads it needs to exist still. What's crazy is my uncle gave me like 2 old iPods. And even though I do have the cords with the really fat plug to charge them, it's faulty wiring in the plugs. It's faulty adapters within the iPod. And I just can't get them to charge. Buy new cords, can't get them to charge. So it's an older medium. I've got the physical iPod. In it has the Dropkick Dwarf, but I can't. Is it the plug? Is it the adapter in the iPod? So the guy goes running all over town, finds a VHS player. That one doesn't work. He gets another one through like online auctions. Finally, that comes. He got it to play. It wasn't what we thought it was. It was just this creepy video of some guy in a cloak, like talking and whatever in a different language. It was a whole thing. But you're right. Like, hey, I've got my whole collection of Dragon Ball Z. You also are totally reliant on, in 15 years, like, yeah, you might have the special edition of Dragon Ball Z where the special alien lifts her top up, but you still need the DVD, the DVD player, not only to exist, but work and be able to project on your screen. You get an old VHS player, y'all remember these days, red, yellow, white.
And white.
So guess what? What if you've got a modern TV that doesn't have it? Now I'm on the hunt for an adapter that takes an HDMI plug and splits it into a red and a yellow and a white. And
you are totally right. You are 100% right. And I still think it's worth putting up the fight. And here's why.
Damn straight.
Because I don't trust these people as far as I can throw them. I think these people are the most dishonest, anti-American people.
Anti-human.
Exactly. And listen, it's like, that's that quote in Game of Thrones where like they ask John, who's the enemy? Oh, Jon Snow asked the guys like, who's the enemy? The guy's like, death. And John was like, well, everyone dies. And the guy's like, and that's the conundrum. It's like, we face an enemy that we know we'll lose to, but we face him anyway. That's how I feel. I know eventually my VHS play ain't gonna work, but until it does stop working, I'm gonna keep buying tapes and DVDs and all of that stuff.
Put a fork in it, dude. That is a perfect pin to that point. All right. I know I've been keeping you here for a fat minute, but I do have a little bit else I'd like to get into if you don't mind. Man. We got before though, we flirted with it. We got to nerd out a little bit. Are you excited for this Harry Potter show?
No, I'm gonna tell you why. Reason number one, I feel like I rewatch the movies all the time. And the movies still look good. They still got the magic quality.
Have you been to Universal Wizarding World?
Never been. Oh, never been. Is it that great?
First off, I don't think there's enough times in my life I'll be able to go simply for butterbeer. Like the drink butterbeer is worth, and it's not even alcoholic. It's like saying I go to an amusement park just for an ice cream cone. Like, it sounds pathetic, dude. The drink alone. I'm not alone. It's a whole cult. People are traveling the world just to get another butterbeer. And I'm telling you, those rides are such like the highest pinnacle of amusement park technology. Talk about being fully immersed in a ride. Every single one continues to get more thrilling. Did you know the new Epic Universe and Universal Studios? So again, now they have 3 parks with 3 different Harry Potter worlds. This new one cost them almost $2 billion. It was 1 point some billion dollars to just it's a whole world, dude. You're going, it's crazy.
No, listen, that's up my alley, so I gotta go because I've been to Disney World twice and I loved it, and I always heard Universal Studios is like where you gotta go. But the movies still look great. Sometimes you'll watch old movies and you'd be like, oh man, this didn't age well at all. The Harry Potter movies still look great, right? Number 2, I get ish for this, but I don't like when they take the characters and they make them a different race. I hate that stuff. It doesn't even make sense for the world. The reason why they were all white, and they weren't even white as much as they were English. It's the location. Yeah, there was like one black person that was always a part of the little crew over there, but yeah, there weren't a lot of black people. I don't like when they do that because I feel on guard. Like, okay, if y'all doing this, I kind of suspect some BS is going to take place once the TV show start. So, does
it also feel like everybody's looking at you? Like, then they do it and then everybody's like, you know what I mean? Like you put me on, I'm only interpreting like you're putting me on guard because it's like, I didn't even ask for this. Now everybody's looking at me and I just wanted to watch a Wizarding World. I don't care what they look like.
And I get it because there has been kind of the conversations about, no black people in Harry Potter stuff. I was never part of that because, again, I don't need, contrary to popular belief, I don't need to see me in all the art that I consume. That was always strange to me. I'm a big anime fan. I love Dragon Ball Z. For like the first couple of seasons, there weren't no black people in Dragon Ball Z except for like, I guess Mr. Popo was black, but he's black. And then, like Oob. But other than that, I love Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. Like, I don't need to see me to enjoy content.
Wait, but can I also, when I watch Rush Hour, I saw me. Why do they have to have, what spectrum of melanin includes and then discludes me? I saw me and Chris Tucker. I saw me and Jackie Chan. Right when I got annoyed with my, rambunctious friend, I related to Jackie Chan. When I was the rambunctious friend, I related to Chris Tucker. Like, at some point, it's like these characteristics are so immutable. Like that, Google it as I'm saying it to you, listener. Google immutable. That definition is what I'm plugging into this point. So irrelevant that, for you to say that's what I'm finding my value in, it's like, so you're telling me the important thing for society is for them to find value in something that is totally valueless. Sounds healthy.
I'm with you. Me and you agree on that point, right? And I think the last thing that gives me cause to pause is, J.K. Rowling is involved, kind of, but I worry that the showrunners, because J.K. Rowling has pissed off all of the trans people, I worry they're going to try to overcompensate and do something weird with the show. So that's why I'm gonna watch it. Of course, I'm a Harry Potter fan, but I'm watching it with I'm going in expecting to be disappointed and assuming that they're gonna ruin a great intellectual property.
I love your point because they know they won. We're gonna watch it. Yeah. It's going to be. It could be amazing. It also could be dog shit, and we're still signing up for it. That's how they know. So I was doing some reading about Disney and their what do they call it? Live action versions of all of their old catalog. And it was a Disney board member explaining how we are going to do live action versions of every movie till we're blue in the face. As long as we can do it, because there's just so much more profit in them. We don't have to die. The writing scheme, all of this is. I learned this recently. So we know that now, if you're blocking out funding for a movie, we've all kind of understood that a major chunk of that now is CGI.
Yep.
But did you know? I didn't know. Like, I thought, because I think Silicon Valley, I think who's making Facebook, I think who's making Google. I just think it's a bunch of, American computer nerds in like California or somewhere. Did you know that almost all of CGI is done at an extremely low cost? Obviously, at super high volume, we're still talking millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in South Korea. So here they are now blocking out a huge chunk of this to ship over to South Korea so they can just do all of the CGIing and putting of this thing together. And so again, I very much relate to your perspective of it. I don't know. When I take a step back, though, I feel like we're never going to leave this world. Disney has made it clear to us that this is the future of the landscape. We did the work, we did the time of building an audience. Now that audience exists, we're just going to keep squeezing from this fruit until it doesn't have juice to offer anymore. It's funny when you look back at the old Harry Potter, you go, it still looks great. It still looks great. I think you and I, if a Gen Z or our age, once they grow up, are not going to truly appreciate. You and I lived in a very special window of cinema.
Totally agree.
Jurassic Park, Harry Potter. This was a world where I could CGI the dinosaur blinking, but I still had to spend $1 million to build a fucking dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Harry Potter can have Harry flying a call graph or whatever it is, like the bird horse. They also had to build a bird horse.
Totally agree.
Like, I feel these stories, this special window, you'll never get to go back and remake them. It was just this moment in cinema. I think they'll transcend forever the dawn of time because they're real. Your eye has the ability, like Saw. I make this comment all the time. My mom and my sister put on the show Botched, and it's some lady getting her butt cheek hacked open, and I cringe. I'm like, oh my God. And because it's a real butt cheek, and it's wide open. Then I go watch the movie Saw, and the dude plucks his eyeball out, and I'm like, my brain has a cognitive disassociation to where, like, I know wholeheartedly it is so not real that it has so no impact on me. But I walk into the living room to Botched and I'm cringing. So your brain knows real from fake. And when we're shipping out 75% of the movie to be made on a computer in South Korea, like, this is just, I'm doing it. This is just Chinese factory made, mass made crap. And the proof is in the pudding. And it comes back to your point too of, like, it doesn't matter what color you make them. They can look like whatever you want them to look like. Is the story good?
Yep.
Are you selling me and captivating me on this story? And as long as your focus is my philosophical, belief on trans folks, you're never going to make a good wizard story.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's my biggest concern is that they'll ruin the art because of all of this other stuff. And to me, it's not necessary at all. Tell a good story.
Do you think J.K. Rowling's going to let them put a trans character in this show? I think the world would quake.
I don't know how, like, was it J.K., like, is she like a producer, or did she just sign off on the rights of her intellectual property and they do whatever they want to do with it? Because I can see them doing that just to spite J.K. Rowling. Absolutely.
I can see them try. They're going to try.
Yeah.
But I know the lady is brilliant. There is not, like, even the amusement park, she has not given away any bit of that intellectual property without full control of yay or nay.
I respect it.
Yeah, boy. If you come up with just some random story on a napkin as you're sitting on a train in Europe, you don't give that. You got the golden ticket. You just hit the lottery. Do not give the numbers to anybody.
Listen, it ain't that many people that have the second best-selling intellectual property outside of the Bible. So I think she did pretty good.
Facts.
I think she did pretty good.
So let's close her out here with one final topic. Oh wait, you know what? Actually, Do you mind, just because I did find this to be very interesting, one last thing I'd like to talk about. We were talking about podcasts versus books, and one of the things I noted here is like people are listening to podcasts 2 times, 3 times speed. So you're just getting it all thrown at you, and you're collecting just like, highlights of it versus a book. And when we did this whole conversation of audio versus reading and all, a lot of your point boiled down to it depends on the individual.
Yes.
And I'm forced to then ask you objectively, then, is there individuals that, and I would assume just regularly could say yes, but are there individuals who are superior to others? If it depends on the individual, somebody's got to be superior to the other. And therefore, is the medium at which they're using an indicator of that? Is there a causation, correlation, or it's totally detached from it? And, there's smart people consuming one and consuming the other. Like, what are your thoughts? Because you're saying it depends on the individual.
Yeah.
And
so you're asking me, do I believe in equality?
Or maybe the inverse of that, equity, where it's like,
okay,
if it depends on the individual, and there's some individuals that are smarter, some individuals are dumber, can we say reading versus listening to an audiobook is an indicator of that? Can we say that either of those are a guider of that people that read more tend to be smarter, people that listen more, but again, Brian's got 40 books in the bag, so he's no dummy either. So could you be strong in both worlds? If it depends on the individual, does the medium at which they use, so it depends on the individual which they choose, but also does that medium depend? I'm trying to frame it in the inverse, where can that medium also guide the individual?
You're saying, can we draw, can we draw correlations between the mediums that individuals
or even
use?
A causation?
Okay, so here's what I would say. From a philosophical standpoint, I don't know whether or not I think all people are equal. And I say that because I guess it would boil down to, do I think we all have the same value? And my gut instinct is no, but it would kind of depend on what am I valuing at the time. For example, somebody who has an IQ of, let's forget IQ. Let's say somebody's a software engineer, right? Software engineer, whiz, can make a program, right? This person in American society is very valuable because we don't have that many software engineers, number one, so they're compensated well. They're valuable to their company, right? Obviously, because that's how they turn a profit. Let's say we're all on an airplane though, and airplane crashes on like a remote island somewhere, and there's no help coming, right? Suddenly, the software engineer, if they only know how to engineer software, you are no longer that useful. The person who's like a survivalist is suddenly the most useful person on this beach or this island right now, right? Because of where we are. I would say that's how I approach individuals on. I may not think that someone is innately inferior to somebody else, though I value personally intelligence. I value personally discipline. I value personally, people who have certain morals and values, and I value them more than I do other individuals. But someone else who has a different value system can have the exact opposite. Now, I do think, though, as it pertains to the mediums of how we consume information, I would say right now, though, most people who can read very well, unless they're deaf, they can listen. But the person who can listen to audiobooks, they might not be able to read.
Right.
Right. So one person can do 2 things.
Interesting.
The other person can only do 1 thing well. And because reading was the way in which information was recorded,
for the dawn of time.
Exactly. that means that there's a lot of information that the person who could do both can access, that the person who can only do one thing can't access, right? Because for whatever reason, there's no audiobook that exists for this book, but it was written thousands of years ago, whatever, right? So the person who can read has an advantage over the person who can't, right? Even if it's a smart person and they listen to a bunch of audiobooks, if I can do both, I have both of these tools at my disposal. So that person has a leg up in society as currently constructed, I would say.
Whew. That is a brilliant answer. So last piece I had for you,
yes,
because
sir.
it's a little timely to right now, and you had some interesting takes on it. And boy, is it a true reflection of the moment in time. Can't say what it's going to look like in 4 weeks, 3 weeks when this episode comes out. But just this past weekend, we had the most important protest of our lifetime, the protest against kings. And one of the things that you drew upon is that this was like the longest protest that we've ever seen. It was, they're trying to pretend like it was the most attended protest that we've ever seen. But then you had a hilarious reflection on this whole experience, which is nothing changed. If this is the longest protest and you're saying it had the most people, nothing changed. So some might say there was never a king to begin with, but that's probably another conversation for other people, not us thinkers, of course. So keeping it grounded with us, if nothing changed, what's the value of protesting? Is it a lost art, or are we doing it wrong? Do we just need to start more Starbucks on fire?
Can you put that graph back up?
Oh, yeah.
Because I want to ask you a question. So George Floyd, BLM, that was, of course, the George Floyd death and, like racial justice, quote unquote. Right. The nuclear freeze rally, I'm assuming it was about nuclear weapons?
Yes.
Okay. March for Our Lives. What was that one about?
I'm going to assume that was Rodney King. I don't know.
No, but it's 2018.
Oh, yeah.
So
would that have been? What would that have been?
That's what I'm trying to remember. I don't remember that one. The March for Our Lives.
March for Our Lives.
Trump was in office, of course.
Is a student-led organization that leads demonstrations in support of gun control. This is the David Hogg and the other people.
Got you.
When they did that staged event at that school. Oh,
I got you.
Sorry,
Vietnam, of course, Vietnam. The Women's March, that was after Trump that was the P hats, right? The P hats.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. So the nuclear freeze campaign was a mass movement in the United States in the 1980s to secure an agreement between the U.S. and the Soviet governments to halt testing, production, and deployment of nuclear weapons. So this probably had something along the lines of the Cold War as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I bring this up because out of all of these 6 protests, no. So unfortunately, the George Floyd protests were very effective. Now we're rolling all stuff back now. But they got a lot of stuff passed and corporations to sign up to silly stuff. But out of all of these,
disappointed of all the white statues they tore down. They needed to go to our Indians baseball stadium, tear down Bob Feller so we could build a Jose Ramirez statue. That is diversity.
Yeah.
But of course, we were out lost in left field, figuratively.
So I was alive for 1, 2, 4 of these. I only felt so 2 of these I felt, which was the George Floyd BLMs and the Women's March, right? The rest, so this whole No King's Day, the point that I was making is, I'm not sure I believe this graph, but let's assume that it's true, right? Like it's accurate, right? That 5 million people came out on Saturday. I didn't feel anything, and that's strange. Like, usually, George Floyd, I was home. I wasn't out. So I was home, minding my business. I felt the George Floyd protest. I felt the Women's March protest. They was out there. They had the hats on. They was doing everything, right? Like, I wasn't out there, but I felt it. I didn't feel, I saw the videos, but I didn't feel the protest. And I'm wondering.
Well, because you didn't know a person in your social circle that brought it up. At least when you walked outside, the Women's March was actually exclaimed by 50% of your colleagues and friends and inner circle. At least 50% of your friends, colleagues, and people posted a black square on their Instagram. But this, you know what's crazy? Saturday, my buddy had a wedding. I was so blessed that my day was distracted with a life event because I didn't even know until I got home. I was like, oh, yeah, the world was supposed to burn today because the Walmart spoiled brat lady tried to convince the world that we have a king. That sounds like an oligarch trying to get you to do shit in their favor, folks. But, you know, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and so that's what was strange for me. And I do think like protesting is effective. The problem is it's most effective if done in conjunction with the unsexy things. That was my main point, is that people protest because it's sexy. But the things you actually need to do to make changes to laws and, you know, public opinion, they go past protesting. You have to protest in a manner that is disruptive enough that catches people's attentions, but isn't disruptive in a way that causes the public overall to kind of hate your guts, which I feel like too many of these modern protests, they don't understand. So there's that. But then you have to follow it up by, you know, voting. You have to follow it up by having debates. You know, one civil rights movement, one part that gets left out, yeah, there was protest and, you know, they did things that were actually tangible, like the Montgomery bus boycott.
Right.
Like, there were dollars and cents that were affected, right? Oh, we're not using a bus. We're going to walk everywhere or take cars or whatever, or, you know, drive neighbors. And we're not, and they did that for months, not weeks, months. And they lost revenue month after month after month. And so there was a bottom line that was affected. I think those parts don't get, you know, talked about, or when we look back at history, nearly enough. Public debates. MLK will go on, you know, news programs and, you know, have, you know, talks or debates with people. Malcolm X did the same thing, right? Because you have to get your point of view and your perspective out there. I don't think, you know what? We do have that still. Here's what I think is happening. Because of how diverse the media landscape is, it's not like it was before where you only had like 4 or 5 channels or like, you know, programs where everyone watched the same thing. So what's happening now, because of the internet, because everything is so fragmented, yeah, you know, Piers Morgan will have a panel discussion about guys or whatever, but only a certain number of people will watch that. And then a certain number of people will watch, you know, the Young Turks, and then somebody else will watch, you know, the Blaze, right? And so we're not watching the same thing. So maybe that's why we don't see too many of those debates and discussions anymore. And so maybe we're just reaching a point where it's just harder and harder for you to have a protest that is actually effective in bringing about change. Because I don't think anything about the way Trump governs or any of his policies related to ICE is going to change because of these protests at all.
So what is a protest? By definition, a statement or action is expressing a statement, okay, or an action, okay, expressing disapproval or objection to something. Okay, so almost anything in disagreement or defiance is a protest. So it isn't, is it a protest or not? It's, is it an effective protest? And when I look at the folks that actually changed the world around them, they couldn't use drinking fountains. They couldn't go to schools. They couldn't be taken serious in workplaces and hospitals and really most systematic locations. And they flipped it on its head. Okay, how'd you effectively do that? Well, I'm assuming Rosa Parks, when she was sitting at the front seat and they tried to pull her out, she stabbed the guy. Oh, no, she didn't. Oh, no, she played the martyr. She got arrested. She highlighted for the rest of the world what true victimhood looks like. She didn't maybe get casted in a light that makes her look a little less like a victim because she also took on the position of the aggressor. No, she stayed the martyr.
Yeah.
Seems to me the more effective protest is, like Jesus said, fully turning the other cheek, taking the full brunt of it, continuously swallowing it. Because it's not that I'm saying you need to take your beating. What I'm trying to say is it's more effective to the compromised audience you're trying to convince rather than becoming an aggressor against them. Now they're on the defensive versus sitting back neutrally, reflecting upon the lack of humanity around your situation.
Yeah.
So while Martin Luther King was victorious in and Malcolm X, victorious in powerful debates, they also did it as the martyr. Martin Luther King had some of his most effective writings from a jail cell. You couldn't convince a single Black Lives Matter person while they're taking all of your donations and buying $100 million homes. You can't convince that person to be the martyr. They're at war. They have now totally preceded the aggressor. You're more aggressive. But back to the Rosa Parks thing. You're not even fighting the cop trying to pull you off the bus. You're blowing up the whole bus, going, why are the rest of the passengers not getting on board with my message? It's because you're now the problem.
Yeah.
So I also think it's not that protesting doesn't work. It's that we have forgotten what effective protesting is. All of this is protesting. And it really does come down to vote with your views, vote with your dollars, turn the other cheek, be the martyr, and only strengthen your position. Because anything adverse to that is going to be adverse to your message.
Yeah, just to put a button on your point there, I'm not opposed to violent protesting, but to your point, like if you're gonna get violent, kind of like, for example, when you know the Boston Tea stuff, right? The founders, when they, you know, that was property damage, right? They destroyed the tea, threw it in the water, right? It's property violence, but it had a point. It was about a specific, you know, good service, right? It didn't inconvenience anybody, and so that's what I mean when I say, you know, like to your point about we don't know how to protest, and again, I think that we have all the tools now where we don't have to do violent property damage protests anymore, right? But if you're gonna do it the way they did it,
effectively.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It had a message. It was about a specific item.
Tell me you saw with like this LA stuff. They're like, all right, you're burning this down for immigration. Did you find it? So there's this guy. He's got a very recognizable voice because he's like TMZ, like what do you call the paparazzi guy? And so he's all around LA. He's finding celebrities. It's always been his thing. And he's one of the more casual, friendly guys. He tends to get the best out of celebrities. I could promise you if I found a couple videos, you go, I recognize that.
Looking at the voice. Got you.
So here's a guy that has lived his whole, you know, paparazzi career in LA. Now they're doing these riots and he's walking through the street and here's I'm not even going to opine upon it. You can just put the image in your head. A stereotypical white liberal chick with a mask on, walking around, spray painting shit. And he stops her and he goes, hey, I'm on no side here, but I'm just trying to get an idea of like your message, right? Like this is why you're doing it, right? You're trying to get the attention and the message to the people. What are you trying to accomplish here? Like, what are you trying? And she, you know, looks at him as what's hilarious is all these people in the ignorant, you know, they are on the wrong side of history ideologically. All those people that are on the wrong side of ideological history, do you notice when they're at these protests, they look at just the journalists documenting what's going on as a threat, like a literal threat? They'll scream into the microphone. They'll try to fight them. They'll try to beat them. It's like, it's almost like you don't want the reality of who you are and what you represent to get out there. It's like you are your own worst enemy. I wish you could see that. But anyway, I digress. So here's a guy that's like, give us your point. And she finds him as an aggressor. She's beating him down, yelling at him and everything else. While she can't give a message to him, he goes, She's like, we're trying to prove the government, and this is how we make whatever. And he goes, but if this is all for immigration, you know, especially like Mexican migrants, how does this benefit burning the Mexican locally owned restaurant down the road? And so it's like, you just did a disservice. Here's a Mexican immigrant that came here safely, paying taxes, holding down being a functioning member of your community with a restaurant, and you burn them down in defense of what? Their rights and their liberty? Like, you're off base. So let me flip it back to you with something that's been a focal point in this dialogue. A lot of the media is giving criticism back to Texas because Texas said, if you see this shit, drive through them. If they try blocking the road, drive through them. Yeah. And I have been a strong advocate for, Mr. Government, the entity that we have fictionally created. If you get to take my liberty for jaywalking, then you also cannot protect a blue-haired freak from stopping me from getting to work or the hospital. So either jaywalking is going to be enforced by you in its entirety, or I get the right to enforce it myself because, or it just goes away. And then everybody gets to walk everywhere and there's no rules on the street. But you can't live in both worlds where you're going to ticket me for jaywalking, but protect this person to totally disrupt and derail society and its function.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I have to think about this one a little bit more, only because on the one hand, I'm someone who, I've said historically, if your protest is sanctioned by the state, you don't have a protest, you have a parade. Right? Like, it's a parade. It's not a protest. Yeah. Like, that's what it is. The entire point of a protest is to be disruptive. At the same time, to your point, like, I don't want people just like, taking up shop in the middle of a highway. You can just cut off, and ambulance can't get through, people dying, they can't get body parts, like police can't get by. That you can't have a society that way. Like, we need services to run, and you would think that the protesters would be smart enough to realize, kind of like we talked before, like, you have to be disruptive enough where people pay attention, but not disruptive in a way where they hate you.
Right.
Like, they can't do that stuff for some reason. But I don't know if driving through a crowd would work, because the governor can say what they want, but isn't it the no, because you can get brought up on federal charges that way.
What do you mean?
So, like, let's say if I drove through a protest, right?
No, technically, yes.
Yeah, and the federal government charges me with like a hate crime, right? So the governor can get me out of jail either way. It's a federal crime. So I don't think you should, like, put yourself in a position where you end up making your life more complicated. I get it's frustrating. I hate it when I watch it. I hate it because I'm like,
my blood boils.
Yeah. I hate it.
And the bigger one is, what if you're like, have you seen a pickup truck pulling like a trailer? And that's just easy pickings, right? Like, here's a heavy vehicle towing shit, and people are just piling on. There is a moment where you've got like the mob attack, where they're all on the vehicle, they're punching your windows because you like inched your way through or like towards them, and the mob turns on you. At that point, dude, my foot is flush with the carpet, and Jesus is taking the wheel. Like,
I got you, man.
If it's me or the mob, all 150 of you are going, and this tractor is going to need a paint job.
Again, like, I get it. I totally get it. I'm not saying I disagree. I would just have to sit and think about it a little bit more before I had like a position, if that makes sense.
Well, because I'm with you, and I'm kind of doing the thinking with you too, because one, it's really the only form of protest that we see anymore.
Yeah.
Two, it isn't effective. Like, this has been around since Occupy Wall Street, and guess what? Wall Street still be kicking, fam. So when you sit back and you go, like, the other interesting thing I thought about as you were saying it, correct me if I'm wrong, but to my perception, it feels like only one political side of the spectrum employs this tactic. It continues to not work. It continues to inflame the public. And maybe that's the point. I mean, the world is their stage, and maybe the point is to make the noise but not be effective. But at the same time, is it that these people are shallow thinkers and they don't have the ability to, maybe it's because their position is so weak too, but could it be that they don't have the ability to come up with an actual more effective way to accomplish this? I don't know. It's interesting that you'll never see conservatives. Like, here's Kavanaugh out here going, hey, I think we're going to take AR-15s. We're working with the Supreme Court. It might happen. I don't see a world of conservatives holding down a freeway with their with or without their AR-15s, but to support this law, like the protest.
Yeah, Republicans and conservatives, they do more like
ballot box and with your dollar bills.
What? Yeah, but they also march. Like, if you remember the what, Charlottesville?
Yeah,
right. Like they'll march.
Another one that strikes me as a play, by the way. But where are those guys today? I'm sold on the fact that those people are out there, right? They're still here. Dude, as one of the evil whites that you've been stuck having to talk to, I truly don't believe they exist. I've got the friend that, you're on Xbox and he slips the N-word. He has never grabbed a torch in his life, but also you could go, but dude, you're also not a piece of shit. And so it's ignorant of me to believe that I'm sitting here rubbing shoulders with every piece of shit. I'm not that blind to myself to realize, birds of a feather, I'm not roaming with assholes, but I don't see those guys.
No, I got you. Yeah. My only point was just that,
I know. But I feel like a lot of this is fictionalized, just like the liberal shit. I think that, like, George Soros drops off 10 pallets of bricks. I don't think they were initially planning on stoning the local courthouse. It just developed that way.
Yeah. I got you.
Sorry.
No, you good. You good. Yeah. That's again.
I think this was a strong dialogue. As I kind of derailed us at the end, do you have any wrapping thoughts in our considerations of protests, where they're at now? Is there a more effective way that we should lean towards if the dialogue or the conclusion is, it's what we're doing now isn't as effective as it should be? Is there something that would work? Should we change our goals and approach to making our voices heard?
As regarding the protesting, no, it's the other things other than protesting that you have to do. You have to pay. You have to read the actual bill, the whole bill. You have to, learn how government works. You have to, go to your city councilman. You have to, the non-sexy things. That's all I gotta say. It's like, it's not sexy. Protesting is sexy. The things that you have to do in addition to protesting for change, those are not sexy, and that's what you have to do if you actually want to have change in politics. So
is there anything? And sorry, I wanted to bring you back. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that point about the Charlotte? I got derailed on.
No. Yeah, it was just about that. It was just.
But again, I think what you were going to draw upon is that, like, here it had an impact, but an unhealthy impact, and the fact that we're 15 years later still talking about it, and nobody was actually hurt. Like, think about how much more effective.
One girl died.
What?
Yeah. Remember that she got hit by a car?
Hold on. Time out. So you and I can be on the same scope of understanding.
Yeah.
I was talking about when the crew of white guys in the middle of the night, like the first Trump election. Remember the tiki torches? Like, everybody talked about the tiki torches. You're talking about when a guy drove a car through it, which is obviously a lot more related to what we were talking about.
Yeah, before that happened, it was like a regular march.
It was very real and totally fucking insane.
My bad. Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, you good. I forgot there were two things that happened in Charlottesville. My bad. Yeah.
Well, so what's the greater point of that? Like, again,
I was
it
just
should
making
be
a point.
federal crime.
You know, yeah.
And that is not a staged play.
Yeah, I was only making a point that before that incident happened, there was an actual regular protest with conservatives was marching. I think because they was changing like the name of one of the monuments, something like that. Robert E. Lee, something like that.
Yeah. Right.
It ended up spilling into violence, but that wasn't what the point of the march. So I say conservatives, they march, you know, yeah. But you know, like this was dope, man. This was dope.
This was a great time, my friend. I want to give you the floor real quick. Tell people what you got going on, where they can find you, and how they can get plugged into the Cruel Philosophr.
Yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube and TikTok. Just search, Cruel Philosophr, no Ian Philosopher. Same thing on X as well. I have a podcast, the Cruel Philosophr podcast, that you can find my work on as well. I'm moving into the streaming game, so the streaming realm. So you'll see me do more live stuff, and I'm gonna be doing some commentary, but also some gaming as well. So trying to have more fun on the internet. But yeah.
Oh, cool. What's the game of choice?
I don't know. I gotta see what's on PlayStation Plus because I got a subscription, and I'm so right now I'm playing God of War Ragnarok, but I'm in the middle of that game. I'm gonna start a fresh game once I get everything set up.
I love it. And guys, like he said, be sure to go check out his Twitter, just like everything else he's putting out there. His Twitter is one of my favorite follows. Keep yourself grounded. But with that being said, we appreciate you listening to us. If we made you laugh, if we made you think throughout this time, the best thing you can do to support the show is share this episode. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss what we got going on. Along with the podcast, we also do the Rethink Tank Live, which you can catch every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And like I indicated, we have our reactions channel, which is a little bit of a break from the chaos, the politics, the social dialogue. Sit back on a Sunday, have a cup of coffee with us, and wake up with some laughs. So that all can be found in one central place, and that's at our website at www.rethinktankpodcast.com. They don't like real and honest conversations like this. So the best thing you can do to support what we got going on here is take that link and spread it around. If you liked it, then someone else will too. So we greatly appreciate you giving back. Like I said, that's the best thing you can do for us here. But otherwise, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Bye, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, bro. I always love talking to you, man.